Americans and the world await final results of U.S. presidential election as Republican candidate Donald Trump takes lead in the results so far released.
And in other headlines, Presidency directs security agencies to ensure violence-free elections in Ondo and River States.
Senate worries over congestion in Nigerian prisons as House of Reps urges federal government to immortalize the late Colonel Abuja and 6 other soldiers.
Vice President Oshibajo declares open second annual education conference. Described teachers as key to achieving Education 2030 agenda.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we'd like to welcome you to the program. Of course, a special edition, by the way, Blessing. We're still awaiting the final outcome of the U.S. election that took place yesterday. We have some 42 states that have turned in their full results out of 50, and the indications are there that Republican candidate Donald Trump is ahead. As at the last count, he had some 244 electoral college votes. He needs just 26 more, but of course, there are still a number of states outstanding for the Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton.
Well, 18 months of soaking in so many activities. It was from the primaries through the convention, the campaigns. It's been one great choice Americans have to contend with and to make in a moment. Well, history, like we've said, is about to be whichever way it swings at the end of the day. For Donald Trump, for Hillary Clinton, there's something historical about Americans' choice for 2016.
There's no question about that, Blessing. The entire world, of course, has been gripped by what's been rolling in the United States over the past 18 months, as you have indicated, and essentially since yesterday, when the votes, were cast finally, and then the tallies also started coming in. Obviously, I mean, the position of the United States in the Committee of Nations explains quite clearly why there's a great deal of global attention and interest in who leads that country. It's the world's most powerful and most prosperous nation that history has ever known.
Well, like just in line with what we have been looking at, unlike the previous exercises, well, the process of electing the 45th president of the oldest democracy in the world, they took a new dimension as for the first time, well, U.S. had a female presidential candidate on the platform of the Democratic Party, and also that of a businessman who defeated 16 seasoned politicians to actually become the nominee for the Republican Party. And eventually, well, the president-elect, just like we said, they're still on. So let's see what is going to turn out.
We're still, of course, keeping track of the results as they come, as well as the projections, by the way, because it will take quite a while before the final tally is known. Exactly. As a last count, Donald Trump was leading in the national vote by well over 1 million votes, and they also had the lead in terms of the electoral votes. You had an electoral college system, 244, as I indicated a moment ago. But let's back up a bit. 18 months, and particularly last few months of the campaign, the build-up, of course, was characterized by a lot of acrimony and scandal and insult, matters or issues that had never previously been witnessed in the U.S. presidential election. It was quite unprecedented, and it's interesting for a number of reasons, negative as well as positive.
Working just as it's been monitored here and there, the election, which is especially which forced the electorate to actually use ballot papers. There were cases of some machines malfunctioning in some counties and some other areas. Also, the president, that said, Donald Trump now actually filed a suit to contest early voting in Nevada, but that was actually dismissed by the judge. And some other areas too, it's some kind of contentious issues like you've pointed out. And we also saw in the process of the months of campaigns, a seemingly divided nation for both candidates.
Definitely. I mean, blessing, it couldn't be similarly. America is split down the middle, as it were. Or you have, it's a divided country, and whoever emerges president and is sworn in on the 20th of January next year will have a difficult task of having to heal the rift that's been created as on account of the acrimonious campaigns that we've seen in the last few months. Now, but obviously, we'll be keeping track of what's going on, and once the final call is made with regard to projections as to who will be the next president of the United States, we'll, of course, we'll be taking a look at all of those issues. But what are the factors that may have accounted for, the lead of whoever is leading at the moment, and whoever also emerges, whoever emerges the president-elect ultimately, and in particular for us, what are the lessons to take away from this, as a country, as a continent. Yeah, and then how should we, as a people and then as a government, now begin to plot our response to a new
relationship.
America, because we had guests on the program yesterday while we were discussing, what this might mean, the worst case scenario, and then of course also the best case scenario. So these are the issues of
both sides of the pendulum, whichever thing.
That's right.
Well, that will be our focus and some of the areas of interest too, like we'll be looking at as guys join us much later in the discussion. Well, more and more questions to be asked. But what does this victory, or whatever the victory, the outcome of the victory will be for Nigeria, like we've already pointed out, and that of the continent? Lessons here and there. Moving forward is going to be a new wave, really, too, for the Americans and even the world at large. Well, that's how it's going to be. But let's take a look at some other areas of interest that for us on the program, usually, our segments will be coming on. But let's start off with the morning news. Well, before that, my name is Blessing Abu. Welcome into today's edition of the program. Good morning, Nigeria. And
I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join Blessing and also welcome you to this edition of the program. We're going over to our newsroom now. Here is Laure Bala Hassan with the news. Hi, Laure.
Hi, Kingsley. Good morning and a warm welcome to the news. President Muhammadu Buhari has directed security agencies to do whatever it takes within the limits of the law towards ensuring violence-free governorship election in Ondo State, as well as the rerun election. The president gave the directive at a state dinner held in his honor by Edo State government as part of his two-day official visit to the state.
What happened in Kogi, Bayelsa, and the River State disturbed me a lot. Why should we be killing each other, beheading each other, putting tires around us and putting people alight? I think we should go beyond that. We must not remain primitive.
The Edo State University will remain a living testimony to Governor Adams Oshomole's vision for a better tomorrow. President Muhammadu Buhari said this while inaugurating the university in Iyamu.
My village primary school, or his village primary school, the state government picks up the bill, so that we have children of the poor who have the explicit admission requirements and those of the rich, but we will not subsidize the children of the rich.
Nigeria is getting money from cocoa, palm oil, palm kernel, groundnuts, hide and skin. It equals not the production and development of petroleum. What petroleum was discovered and developed in one state, we threw everything to the top. Now petroleum is diving from average of $100 per barrel in the last 12 years.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo said the administration is committed to improving the quality of education and in particular that of teachers, describing them as key to the achievement of the Education 2030 agenda. He said this while declaring open the second edition of Nigeria's annual education conference in Abuja.
Is ideological. Indeed, the theme, learning opportunities for all, the critical role of teachers, emphasizes, in my view, the ideological underpinning of education. Education for all. Education is a tool of empowerment. The lack or inadequacy of it can also disempower. so education can create or deepen inequality in society.
And to the legislature, the Senate has resolved to send 2 committees to study situations in Kuje and Suleja prisons. Waziri Zayanu reports that the visit is with a view to serving as case study towards finding lasting solutions to prison congestions in the country.
Warren Prisons was established in 1905 with just a capacity of 548 inmates, but today it's housing over 2,000. It's certainly against the tenets of democracy to detain an accused person for an offense that ordinarily, if he had been convicted, he shouldn't have stayed longer in the prison.
For Nigeria, and that prison today is regarded as the first reformative prison in the whole of Africa.
People should not be in detention centers for offenses they didn't commit.
And still staying with the legislature, the House of Representatives has urged the federal government to immortalize Lieutenant Colonel Muhammad Abu Ali and 6 other soldiers who died on duty on the 4th of this month. National Assembly correspondent Ignatius Nkwo reports that members also resolved to send a delegation to commiserate with their families.
Urge the federal government to offer the spouse of Lieutenant Colonel Muhammad Abu Ali automatic employment and his children educational scholarship to the highest level.
An uncommon patriotic zeal worthy of emulation by every Nigerian.
Everywhere that these are men and women that have put their lives on the line for us to sit here and for us to move around in this country.
He had demonstrated his commitment and his love for his country.
The late Colonel Ali was instrumental to the liberation of my local government, Monguno.
Is it in the ethics of our defense system or Nigerian army that a soldier who has fought war gallantly should remain in the battlefront for 4 years?
So we should make sure that this is reviewed so that we don't keep losing people. Because of course, when you keep somebody for a very long time in war front, fatigue could set in.
The present administration's fight against corruption and a change in attitude for doing what is good for Nigeria further got a boost through the presentation of 2 books titled Know About Corruption and Rebirth of Conscience. Information Minister Lai Mohammed was represented at the event by the Director General of the NTA, Yakubu Ibn Muhammad.
Again, our way back on the path of rectitude and progress is to have a society that is founded on honesty, on integrity, and rewards for hard work.
For us to attain the promised lofty height, we must, like President Muhammad Buhari said, kill corruption before it kills all of us. It is a battle requiring all hands to be on deck, a battle requiring many skills.
And that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Blessing and Kingsley shortly after the break.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Hi guys, look how my baby Jamil has grown. And as they grow, there's a worry we all share: skin rash. Some use lotions or petroleum jelly, but I found what works for Jamil is Nigerian Pampers. It has built-in lotion to help protect his delicate skin and keep him dry. See you in the morning, Jam Jam. Good morning. Join many other moms and try Nigerian Pampers with lotion. Let's beat the rash.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, showing live on the NTA. Now time for the business report for the day. Worried by the re-emergence of the wonder banks, financial regulatory agencies have resolved to shut them down in order to protect Nigerian investors. More details with Joy Ozo.
An enterprise development expert, Fiji Roslyn Adum, has identified investment in Nigeria's largely undereducated population as a panacea to meaningful progress, particularly in this period of recession. Adam, who was speaking with NTA Business News, said the country is abound with a large population of entrepreneurs waiting for moral support and guidance to harness their entrepreneurial potentials. She expressed concern over the destabilization of many Nigerian entrepreneurs as a result of the current recession.
There are those who do not have the privilege of having offices, but they also render a service, bring out a product, and the government has a responsibility to do something to take care of those people. I'll give you an example. More often than not, you have government agencies like the AEPB going around to demolish illegal structures. And I understand that they are doing their work and it brings sanity to the country. But something else there's an approach that can be done that can handle that and then encourage the entrepreneur whose shop is being brought down.
Adam said the recession should rather be seen as a trial to test the strength of entrepreneurs and challenge them to display their ingenuity.
It is challenging, it's trying, but there are things you can pick out of it. And those are the lessons that we should look for right now. Not just looking at the downside of the recession, but to say, now that I've been through this, what have I learned? Has improved? How have I bettered myself in this situation? And then I wouldn't leave it at that, because another error of this country is the fact that we feel every responsibility is laid to the government. That is very wrong. There is no country in the world that is successful that the government has had to do everything.
The business executive urged Nigerians to discard the habit of quick and short-time survival and build capacity for maximum productivity to facilitate quick solution to getting the nation out of recession. The activities of MMM Nigeria and other wonder banks operating in the country may soon be outlawed as regulatory authorities unveil plans to put them out of business. The managing director of the Nigeria Deposit Insurance Corporation, NDIC, Umaru Ibrahim, say the agency has set up a committee to stem the activities of the fraudsters, including the wonder banks across the country. Umaru, who disclosed this to newsmen in Lagos, lamented that despite repeated warnings, Nigerians are still patronizing such illegal fund managers. Represented by the Director of Claims Resolution Department of the corporation, Mr. Bello Shitu, the NDIC boss said the corporation is intensifying enlightenment on the benefits of savings culture, advising Nigerians to patronize only banking institutions that are duly recognized by financial regulatory agencies. The Naira appreciated against the dollar in all segments of the forex market on Tuesday. Investigations revealed that the Nigerian currency gained 44.95 Naira to exchange to the dollar at the interbank market after its Monday record of 350.22 Naira. At the parallel market, the Naira gained 5 Naira to exchange at 465 Naira from 470 Naira it traded on Monday, while it went for 565 Naira and 510 Naira against the pound sterling and the euro. Next is a graphic summary of trading figures on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange for Tuesday, 8 November. With business news, I am Joy Uzo.
All right, thank you very much there, Joy Uzo, for the business package on Good Morning Nigeria. Now it's time for us to take a look at the headlines, some of the papers we have this morning.
Here's Bayo Atoyebi to take a look at what is trending. Of course, you should expect that the U.S. election is topping most of the dailies this morning. Good morning to you, Bayo.
Yes, good morning. Blessing. U.S. election is top not only in fact every media around the world. Good morning,
That's
Kinsley,
right.
and good morning, Nigeria.
Bayo, incidentally, the story is the lead for The Guardian this morning. And it says, Trump ahead in record turnout U.S. election. And it has two riders, wins more states in early results, and Clinton leads in Vermont and others. Now you have photographs of the two front runners in the election, Clinton to the left and Donald Trump to the right. On page 3, of course, of the paper, you also have photographs of voters at various locations throughout the United States yesterday. Now, also there on the front page of the National Mirror, above the nameplate of the paper, is U.S. election. That's the kicker. Trump raises alarm over voting machines. That's the story you have, and the photograph also on the front page there, the main photograph also shows Hillary Clinton, the Democratic candidate, after she cast her vote in New York yesterday. Now, of course, there are other headlines on the front pages of the papers. Let me just take the other headlines on the front page of The Guardian. The second lead story says, unemployment rises. Government fails to create 1 million jobs in 2016. That's for The Guardian. And three writers to that headline. 1.61 million struggle to fill 10,500 vacancies. Senate seeks emergency declaration on joblessness and summons Labor and Productivity Minister. Also there on the front page, Supreme Court upholds Bayelsa Governor Seriake Dixon electoral victory, and to give reasons on November the 18th. And lastly, on the front page of The Guardian, protest against alleged printing of fake INEC result sheets. That's the greater detail on page 6.
All right, so basking in the fear of the American elections, let's return to that as captured by New Telegraph. It's just on the side to the left-hand corner of the paper. We have the U.S. poll, Clinton, Trump confident of victory. That story, of course, is on page 44. There you have the Democrats nominee, that's Clinton, casting a vote in New York yesterday, and also Trump casting his vote in New York yesterday. That's how is pictorially captured there on the front page of the New Telegraph. But quickly now to the Vanguard. I like the way it is. The next American president is, of course, you have the ellipsis there. Both of them raising their hands. Whoever is the winner, you get to find out. But of course, this one is more like what two other reporters actually taking a look at what is happening with elections in the different states, Washington, D.C., as well as Houston. But the details you find on pages 44 and 45. But leading the headlines for the Vanguard is federal government slams 9-count charge against Justice Nguta. With 3 writers, alleges he has 4 diplomatic passports, as is violating Immigration Act, allegedly falsified diplomatic passports, and also another writer to file charges against Justices Ademola and Okoro today. EFCC probes Ebonyi governor. That is the New Telegraph way of leading this morning. Places hotel filling stations under investigation. SAN paid 5 million naira into judges' accounts for building materials. That story you find on pages 4 and 5 for the New Telegraph. Bayo.
Well, let's start with the U.S. election. In fact, earlier on, the nation has said that Clinton was in an early lead, but they later on modified one of their headlines to read, Triumph Clinton in tight race. The Guardian says, the Guardian also reported his own perspective. However, there was an incident reported by Guardian somewhere in Los Angeles. A gunman came at the polling vote and shot an officer 20 times. He also injured 5 persons. The Telegraph reports that Clinton triumphed confident of victory. The Punch says Trump wins Ohio, and America. Trump wins Ohio. Yes.
But you said triumph.
America awaits a suspense bill. Daily Trust say there is massive turnout of the election, but the Daily Sun says Trump has Clinton in electoral votes. And according to the last count, the electoral votes, Clinton was having 215 votes as to Trump's 244. You require 270 to win the electoral votes. Meanwhile, Trump presently has won what they describe as these 2 strong swing states, the Florida and North Carolina. Clinton has won California and I think Virginia, that is. Meanwhile, New York Times has already predicted that Donald Trump will win. And America has what they call the ominous state. They say for over 20 years, any presidential candidate that wins Ohio eventually ends up winning the election. Presently, Trump has triumphed in Ohio. Talking about the judges, the report you read, Blessing, there are conflicting reports from the newspapers. The Punch says that 6 count charges have been filed. That is also confirmed by the Nation. But the Lead Trust is recounting 9 count charge against a Supreme Court judge, and one of them is money laundering. The other is possession of 2 valid diplomatic passports. One of the papers, again, like you read, is saying 4 diplomatic passports. They also said he was making false statements in passports, and this has affected the date of birth. There is also the charge of money laundering, possession of foreign and Nigerian currency in the home. However, no date has been mentioned for hearing of the cases.
All right, let's return to the National Mirror. National Mirror has as its lead story, Ondo PDP crisis. That's the kicker for the headline. Appeal panel gives verdict on Thursday. And it has a writer, Buhari directs security agencies to ensure violence-free polls in Ondo and Rivers. Now, above the nameplate, just to the right-hand side, we have Senate probes alleged 12.4 billion naira contract scam in CCB, that's the Code of Conduct Bureau. And other headlines on the lower half of the front page of the National Mirror, federal government rearranged Kanu and 3 others for treasonable offenses. That's on page 7. And 3 in court over 75-year-old man's killing. And octogenarian and 3 others who died by hanging for murder. That's on page 9. And the story that Bayo just discussed earlier and the one that Blessing also read is there. National Mirror says, Judge Gate, FG files 9 counts charge against Unguta. That's on page 4 in greater detail. At the foot of the front page, don't succumb to pressure on petrol price hike. Nupeng tells government. That's on page 6 in greater detail.
Well, in line with the issue of oil, above the masthead for the Vanguard, we have a militant attacking Transfocado's pipeline again. That's what we find on page 42. But just beside that, you have the story towards 2019 polls. My worry over 2019 polls by Buhari. They find the story on page 5. Moving further down, beside the photograph of the presidential candidates as Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, you have the story, share ecological fund now. Governors tell federal government. The story we find on page 8. Federal government reaches $5 billion settlement with IOCs. That's on the joint venture cash call. But for the Naira, as we heard in our business reports earlier, Naira crashes to all-time low. Now 375 Naira to the dollar. That story we find on page 9. Okay, Bayo, let's see. Okay, quickly now to the New Telegraph, the same story about the ecological funds. Just at the foot of the New Telegraph, you find governors demand sharing of ecological stabilization funds. Meets finance minister, CBN governor on cash squeeze. You find that story on page 4.
Yeah, Blessing, just before Bayo comes in, let me also indicate that we have the Daily Times here with us. Daily Times is leading with the story. Buhari, that's the kicker, there will be no election in 2019 if. And there is violence in Rivers and Ondo polls, decries electoral killings, and direct security agencies to ensure free election. The story about the governors is also there on the front page. It says, governors move to share ecological fund. That's on page 12. Supreme Court affirms Dixon's election, and Biafra, FG rearranges Kanu and 3 others. And then you have at the foot of the front page of Daily Times, blasphemy. Khan asks federal government to reverse Kanu court judgment. That's on page 7.
Well, let's start with the story, with the headline you read with the poster. There will be no election in 20. If what? The president has said that if it is difficult for security to be maintained for the gubernatorial elections in Edo, what will become of the nation in 2019? And therefore, the president has challenged the security agencies to ensure that security is provided for the election in Ondo and the rerun elections in Rivers. Meanwhile, before the president ended his 2-day visit in Edo State, he said, only God can unite Nigeria. It is not easy for a people to come together in a country of 450 ethnic groups. He says he urged Nigerians to appreciate the strength in our nation, diversity in ethnic and social groups. He says multi-party system remains the best option for Nigeria. And he has also said that he promises to leave Nigeria better than he met it. But in talking again about our diversity, elder statesman Yusuf Maitama Sule, also at a book launch yesterday, says that the amalgamation of Nigeria in 1914 was ordained by God for Nigeria to lead Africa. It was not Britain, but was ordained by God. Talking about the state governors met with the governor of the central bank and the minister of finance. They were discussing about ecological fund and excess crude account. 6 of the governors were in the delegation that met with the minister of finance and the central bank governor. After the meeting, Governor Abdulaziz Yari, who is also chairman of the Governors Forum, said it was a follow-up of their resolutions after the governors' meeting. He says that the nation has environmental challenges: desertification in the north, gas flaring in the southeast, erosion in the southwest. And therefore, there was need to discuss with the Governor Central Bank and Minister of Finance to ensure that ecological funds, stabilization fund, and excess crude account are provided, reports are provided monthly so that they will know the situation of it, and therefore the state needs money from these accounts to be able to tackle some of their challenges.
Well, quickly now to some other headlines found on the front page of the New Telegraph. We have, for page 6, you'll find a story, Biafra, federal government slams treason terrorism charges on Kano. And the next story there, you find gunmen kill 50 miners in Zamfara. That story you find on page 43. And for pages 8 and 6, you find the stories, I stole baby after 10 years of barrenness. This comes from a woman. And corruption, which was one of the stories we saw on the front page of the Vanguard earlier. We have corruption. Federal government files charges against Supreme Court Justice Nguta. Kingsley, any other story?
Well, I think that's the much that we can take. Bayo, obviously, if anyone have any other comment?
Yes, I wanted to draw attention to the
final outcome of the U.S. presidential election.
Well, in a few hours now, we will know the outcome.
Absolutely.
But certainly, the votes are already trickling in, and the electoral votes will certainly determine. But there's this story I want to draw attention to. A super centenarian, a 132-year-old woman, had told people what makes Governor Adams Oshiomhole tick. This was during the president's visit to Yabo, the home of Governor Oshiomhole. And he says that the people of Yabo are known to be not to be coward. They are straightforward, and they do not cheat. They are very, very bold, and that is why God has blessed us. And he says that he prays that President Muhammad Buhari will give Governor Adams Oshiomhole another challenge at the national level. You recall that the president also indicated at the palace of the Omonova that he wants his services at the center.
Okay.
All right. Baya Toibi, we'd like to thank you for being with us on the review segment today. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Tomorrow we are time. The outcome of the election will have been known.
Yeah, already, of course. This was more like a general election because we had races for the Senate. Some 34 seats were up for the House of Reps, and then some governorship
already
races.
In the House of Reps, the Republicans are leading.
Senate, both the Senate and the House of Reps have gone to the Republicans. So we'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with this issue of the U.S. presidential election 2016. None like it before now.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
call of change. Stand up, Nigeria. Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. Go to so let the change begin from within. Look at you, oh get roller. You and me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me.
Whenever pain occurs, you want quick relief. Try new Nurofen Express. It goes to the source of pain and gets to work in under 15 minutes. That's why Nurofen Express delivers fast and effective relief. New Nurofen Express works at the source of pain. Fast.
Being a mom is great, but when your child has a fever, you don't know what to do. I trust Nurofen for Children to take care of my child's pain and fever.
Effective relief you can trust.
On a white sheet of exam paper, I am calm like a sniper, bam like a piper, glam like a rapper. I'm never a slacker.
Fail like a failure.
How was your result?
This wicked girls here gave me.
Then give me.
They gave me 7 E's.
This week on your award-winning comedy series, Professor John Bull, starring Kanayo Okanayo, Mercy Johnson, Queen Wokoye, Yomi Fash Lanso, Stephen Odingbe.
Address me as the Ono. My title is waiting for me.
Oh no, we're waiting.
Anang.
Ono.
Mr. Owowu.
No, I can't take that.
Olowu.
Hey, I don't like all this.
What is that name they call you all over the campus?
Flashbird with a big splash, depending on how you want to lash.
Big name that kills a small dog.
Professor John Bull, fasten your seatbelts. This Tuesday and Friday, 8:30 to 9 p.m. on NTA Network, International, and Star Times. It's absolutely bombastic.
Over and out. Welcome to the new speed of life.
You're welcome back, but if you just joined us, we are reaching you live, as always, on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Just before we went to that short break after our newspaper review, we did indicate that our principal item for discussion this morning is on the U.S. presidential election. Of course, the final results are still being awaited. We do know at this time that the Republican candidate is leading the Democratic candidate, that's Mrs. Hillary Clinton. As our last count that we had, it was 244 electoral votes to 215, and Donald Trump was also ahead, national vote by about 1 million. So you need, of course, 270 to become president-elect. We have issues arising from the election, and we also have guests with us here in the Abuja studios, as well as a guest joining us via Skype from the U.S. At this time, we'd like to welcome to the conversation this morning Ambassador Suleiman Dahiru. Ambassador Dahiru, of course, used to be Nigeria's ambassador to the Sudan. It's our pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And then we also have with us in the studios this morning Dr. Cletus Akwaya. Akwaya, of course, is an international relations expert as well as the Group Managing Director of Leadership Newspapers. Dr. Akwaya, a pleasure to have you on the program this morning.
Good morning, viewers.
Okay. Listen.
Yes, like you indicated, we have a guest joining us via Skype from the United States. We'd like to introduce at this point Mr. Ugo Nwakoro is the Deputy Mayor, City of Newark. We'd like to say good morning to you. Well, it's morning here, and we know it's been a long day for activities back in the United States. We'd like to welcome you at this point. How are you today?
Yes, good morning.
Of course, we'd like to start the conversation with you. Can you give us a sense of what is happening right now? What is the mood? What is the feeling in the U.S. at this moment?
It is our continental African immigrants in the United States is a very big job. I'm still dressed up. I'm coming to the restaurant where we've been watching the results coming. It was very, the Africans were watching it, the result coming. It's been very, gloomy. And people are shocked because, of course, obviously the result that is coming, what people expect. The pollsters, the pundits, nobody predicted what is happening. So it is, whether I'm going to say it's a sad day, but it's
is a very shocking day to us. So the morals of the Africans are low because the African immigrants here don't know what to make out of it.
All right, Mr. Nwankoro, thank you very much. We are seeing that the signals from you are freezing at the moment. We hope that clears up subsequently. But just to indicate that we got the point that you made, that, of course, the African Americans and perhaps other minorities are in shock because the results coming out so far do not seem to quite be in accordance with the expectations. Obviously, from what we have heard, some of the battleground states have been won by Donald Trump. These include Florida, Ohio, North Carolina, as well as, of course, Georgia. Georgia is a red state. Texas, of course, long since gone. California went to Hillary Clinton. But we have another guest to join us in the conversation this morning. He's here with us in the Abuja studios. We've, of course, had him sometime in the past on the program. Professor Okelo Ochuli is an international affairs analyst. Professor Ochuli, a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you.
Okay, well, so let's return to the other guests. First, beginning with Ambassador Suleiman Dahiru. We are awaiting the final figures, and this is down to the wire, as it were, so we cannot call on who is the president-elect of the United States. But the numbers, obviously, are worrisome to some observers who perhaps didn't quite expect things to turn out this way, as Mr. Nwankoro indicated, speaking to us from the city of New York. What's your take?
How the election has taken place, the results, as you said, are trickling in. But so far, it would appear as if Donald Trump is carrying the day. With 244 of the electoral votes, he needs only 26 to be declared the winner of the election. It may be a sad development for the rest of the world, but then that is the choice of the Americans. It is their choice, and they have to live with it if he is finally declared the winner. And at the same time, what one will say is that he capitalized on the fear of the white American population, capitalizing on being swarmed by foreigners who are either Hispanics, Asians, or Africans. So, what do we expect? We do not know. But my take on it is that American institutions are greater than any individual, even the president. Therefore, some of the bombastic things he said or he would do should he win, he may not be able to do them because the institutions are greater than the individual.
All right, Ambassador Dahiru, thank you very much. Cletus Acquire, what's your take on what is unfolding? We understand the markets are already responding elsewhere in the world, that's particularly in Asian countries where the markets have long since opened about several hours ago.
Well, beginning from the markets, as soon as there was a little indication that Trump was leading, even the Dow lost about 500 points on the floor. Now the Asian markets are tumbling, and you expect that to happen across the world, but of course stability will be restored in due course. As said by Ambassador Dahiru, the U.S. has core objectives and fundamentals in her national interests. And it does not matter whether Republicans win or the Democrats win. In her relationship and in her conduct with the rest of the world, there are certain objectives that cannot be compromised. And to me, from Africa and the rest of the world, there are certain things that might not change. For instance, I do not imagine any U.S. president, whoever he is, change the relationship of America with Russia, for instance. I do not imagine any U.S. president altering the partnership and relationship that America has forged with the state of Israel, for instance. And so there are certain fundamentals that are not likely to change, whoever becomes president. So the emergence of Trump, the likely emergence of Donald Trump as the president, might shock a lot of people because empirically the opinion polls indicated that he was going to lose the election. Even the poll of polls indicated he was going to lose the election. But I think he had a strategy. He was campaigning to the 70% of the voters who are white. His message was being sent to the 70% of voters who are white. If you look at the structure of the election or the electorate, the Latinos or the Hispanic voters, the African American voters, combined with the Asian voters, give you a total of about 26% of the total electorate. Therefore, any candidate who was appealing to the sentiments of this 26% was appealing to the minority voters. He took his message to the 70%, and that's where it mattered. And that shows the way the results are trickling in. It shows that he probably had the right message for the larger segment of the voting population.
All right, Dr. Akwa, thank you very much. Let's have a feel of what Professor Okelo-Chile feel about the influence, the fundamentals that the elections are throwing up for everyone to see, especially for the Americans.
Well, I think it is important to notice that the American ruling class, after the end of the Cold War, abandoned their own internal market in preference for China. They saw China as the new area of investment. China had a very highly trained workforce. They didn't have to invest in educating Chinese workers. And of course, when you make a pair of shoes in China, you have a market of 1 billion or hundreds of millions. And so they turned to China and abandoned factories that were employing people in the United States. There were documentaries which showed that states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, were states which were decimated. And a Dutch radio station showed a documentary in which Americans who had lost their houses because they could no longer pay mortgages had fled to Florida to sleep in the forest, because at least in Florida the weather is tropical. You don't freeze. All you need is a mosquito net to protect you. That's how desperate the situation came for a lot of American working class. The concept of America as the land of promise disappeared. And this is what Trump has been focusing on. The other thing that Trump has really worked with, I believe he kept, when he started by targeting Mexicans, he was actually under the tone referring to an old American prejudice. Those racial prejudices against blacks also included prejudices against Jews. And I think the Americans, including quite a number of academics, have for some time now become very worried about the control that Israel has on American foreign policy. And there's a feeling that the crisis that hit the Middle East, the crisis which has led to what they see as terrorists bombing people in the United States, infiltrating the United States using internet and so on, that all that is traceable to American policies towards Israel, which has annoyed and infuriated generations of Muslim youths who increasingly became desperate. If the superpower is backing a country in your area and keep supplying weapons to that country, and there is no way you can fight that country, and also, of course, compromised what could have been your redeemers like Saudi Arabia and so on, then you are left with nothing else but sheer frustration. When you see pictures of children being bombed in Gaza and you feel helpless, and you're sitting with your family, children and wife, and there's a sense in which you are completely helpless, the youth among your children are likely to turn around and say, if my father cannot do anything about it, I will do something about it, including, suicide bombing. So those are things, we have to put these things into context. I noticed that American television commentators keep talking about the establishment. And they don't want to specify concretely what do they mean by establishment. Or you keep saying Washington. What is Washington? It is those interests which people feel have neglected them, have worried about their profits and their investments everywhere else, taken factories as when Trump, I think yesterday, when he was campaigning in Michigan, was it, when he said 70,000 factories were taken away from the United States, it rang a bell to those people. And when he said, today is your Independence Day, he was referring, I think, precisely to that sense of we have been abandoned, we don't have leaders that care about us, and Trump is the first to speak frankly and openly about it. That's my position on this issue.
Okay, well, Professor Okalo Chile, we'll come back to you. Well, that the independence stuff is pretty interesting, President, I believe. That's another 1776 that we tried to take them, particularly one of the points that conflicts with what Ambassador Dahiru said in terms of American position, in terms of his relationship with a number of other countries, Israel in particular. But let's return to the Deputy Mayor of the City of Newark. We had him earlier, Mr. Ugo Onwokoro. We understand that the Skype connection is freer now. If you can hear me, Mr. Onwokoro, just earlier you said that the African Americans, as it were in a state of shock, having to apprehend the kind of dismal figures that are coming in for the Democratic candidate. From your perspective, what happened? How come African Americans couldn't, as it were, mobilize themselves as they did in 2008 for President Obama?
Well, first and foremost, Hillary Clinton, Obama, that one, the story, a black brought out all manners of blacks, regardless of whether they are African Americans or continental African. So, but in this case, Hillary Clinton first. Let's face it, she did with Obama, and the way people African American she got appeal. She had a lot of scandals that made the black votes at check the polls. Blacks didn't come out like they should have come out. But nonetheless, it says something more like about what the state of mind of Americans and those that voted for Donald Trump. Because our concern now is that some of them going to begin to start towing the extreme positions that the kind of campaigned on. Things like anti-immigrant moves, things like Muslims and all that stuff. So that is the main concern. It's not about, because like one of the panel said, there are checks and balances to make sure that whoever becomes the president, works according to what the dictates of the Constitution. But the big concern is about those hardliners, those white supremacists, those folks that are, xenophobia folks, what they do, what this victory or supposedly Donald Trump's presidency will do to them. So that Mrs. Clinton has done her job. She did what she was supposed to do, but she didn't have the full backing of her party, because if you look at the primary was very, divisive. Bernie Sanders and all that. So the Democratic Party didn't quite, cover front. So they didn't have solid party. And some folks actually, they left that the president voted for downline ticket of the Democrats, but they didn't vote for the presidency. So there are things that are happening. So if you put all this together, what happened, people, they still can't, pinpoint, because somebody like shouldn't have felt this position, shouldn't have been a candidate, but here he was a candidate, and here he is winning. There's a lot now that our political science scholars would have to go back to the classroom and rethink about some of our political science policies or science ideology.
Mr. Wokoro, thank you very much for your comments. Let's return to our studios. Ambassador Suleiman Dahiru, what's your take on this? Obviously, we had a comment made earlier by one of our guests here. He said, look, to whom did Trump appeal, and to whom was Clinton appealing to in terms of seeking to mobilize voters? Now, we saw what happened in 2008, and then we also saw a semblance of that 4 years ago for the re-election of President Obama. But here we are, as Mr. Wokoro has said, there's dejection already in the African-American as well as minority communities across the United States. What could have gone wrong? They didn't quite appreciate this as a tough race, or were they misled by the polls?
I think many things went wrong. But first, we should admit that social science is not hard science. What happened was that, one, if you look at the number of votes cast in 2008 for Barack Obama and 2012 for Barack Obama, the figure of 2008 was much higher than the figure of 2012. This voter apathy has started to set in. And then the campaign itself. Perhaps because she has been put at some points ahead of Donald Trump, the campaign shifted maybe to the minorities. As you rightly said, the percentage of the voting minorities is much lower than the percentage of the white voting population. And then the issue of trust came in. The Donald Trump camp kept on hammering this issue of trust, that Hillary Clinton cannot be trusted. And if you remember, there was the issue of the killing of the American ambassador in Benghazi, Libya, which was virtually blown out of proportion because they wanted to nail her. And then the issue of the emails came up. I am of the opinion that the issue of the emails contributed greatly in maybe reducing the enthusiasm to support her. And if you remember, 11 days to the election, the FBI Director James Comey wrote a letter to the Congress saying that they had reopened the investigation, which to me was not a politically correct step to take. But then, as I said before, the institutions in America are very strong. But then, 3 days to the election, the same James Comey said that there was nothing to make them change their opinion, which they took as far back as July. But by then, her momentum has been broken. And we have to look at the minorities themselves. You see, if you don't come out to fight for your right, like they did during the civil rights movement, you always have problem. Because Donald Trump hinged his campaign on whipping up the sentiment, the fear, the apprehension of the white population of the United States. And therefore, his campaign struck the right chord with the American white voting population. The Hispanics, the African Americans and the Asians and the rest, maybe they thought, oh, Hillary Clinton is ahead. Because she is ahead, it may be a walkover. And that was why I said social science is not hard science. Despite up to the day of the election, she was being projected to be 2%, 3%, 4% ahead. But the result of the election, as it is coming out, is showing that perhaps people miscalculated the whole thing. That is why Donald Trump took the battleground states. So we cannot say for certainty that it is all over until it is over. But we can say that maybe the world should start bracing itself for a Donald Trump presidency of the United States. And already there are some ripple effects because the Mexican peso has lost its value by some percentage. The economic indices in some areas are also affected. But we wait and see how the whole thing pans out.
All right. Ambassador Jairu, thank you very much. Well, Dr. Akwayan, let's take a look at we've raised so many issues from aspects of race to some other areas of distrust and some other controversies that have characterized the campaigns up to the last point of election. But something seems to be an undertone for the American voter, which made some of those results we've seen to be turning out this way. Let's take a look at some of the areas of the candidates' policies. Could they have, in one way or the other, let's to the American voter, this is what I'm still going to do, despite what is being pushed. You raised the issue of the emails and some other areas that were raised last minute to actually push down maybe some people's point. Let's take a look at some of those areas of candidates' policies, aspect of race and other areas that could have swung this in this direction.
The 2016 elections were quite different from all the previous elections. And this is why the results are showing a remarkable difference from the opinion polls. And the elections were different in these respects. One, for the first time, a major political party was fielding a female presidential candidate in Hillary Clinton. That's the Democratic Party. Two, Donald Trump, for a very long time, was coming from the private sector, directly, without any previous experience in government, to also become a nominee of a major political party. It has not happened for decades. All the previous presidential candidates of major political parties have either been former senators, been former governors, been former ambassadors, been in government at some point, and so on and so forth. He was coming for a very long time, directly from the private sector, having held no political office at all, and went through the primaries and the caucuses to emerge the nominee or the candidate of the Republicans. Now, there is something about this. There was a tendency to underrate him as somebody who is inexperienced, and I believe that was one of the campaign points of Hillary Clinton, you know, that he was inexperienced, he has not been tested in the art of governance. That might be true, but he has been a leader in the private sector. And they tried to make an issue about how correct he was a businessman, or how upright he was a businessman, or how well he performed as a businessman. Issues of taxes came in, and so on, or whether of his relationship with business interests in countries perceived to be rivals or enemies of the United States. All these were brought as campaign issues. Now, as I said earlier, he, in the midst of all this, developed a message which, to us in Africa, and indeed the developing world, appeared unrealistic and unacceptable, but which, as Ambassador Dahiru has said, struck a chord with the larger percentage of the American voters. Hillary Clinton, as President Obama said in the last campaign rally in Ohio, in New Hampshire, came as a candidate with some of the best credentials that a presidential nominee would have in the recent history of the United States. And so I think there was also some bit of overconfidence in her capabilities, in her experience, in her exposure, in her readiness for the job, in her qualification for the job. And there is something in politics about being overconfident. It helps psychologically to go into the fight, but it also undermine you in terms of the momentum you build.
But is this necessarily a case of overconfidence? Because this is not a rout. I mean, for her to have accumulated so far some 215 electoral votes indicates that it's not a rout, and some of the strongholds they have also held.
Yes, it wasn't, and because you see, it was almost a two-way thing. The other aspirants that were neither here nor there, so you do not expect a very wide margin. But as I said, if we look at the 2012 elections, the opinion polls were saying that the elections were going to be a close shave. I mean, we're going to be a tight race. But as it turned out, Mitt Romney was defeated, and the figures were looking wider than what the opinion polls said. Now the opinion, and indeed previously, the opinion polls have always led us to something close to reality. This is the one election that the opinion polls are showing are going a different direction, and the results of the polls are going a different direction.
The opinion polls are in tatters, by the way. well, Dr. Akwaya, just before we return to Professor Okello Chule, there's a point you talked about, you know, Donald Trump being a businessman, having no political governance experience and coming onto the stage. How would this compare to, for instance, what we saw almost 20 years ago, Ross Perot? Ross Perot, another, you know, very successful businessman who tried to run for president of the United States. The U.S. apparently wasn't ready for a businessman leader at that time. How is the U.S. or why? Let's say, assume.
The times have changed. The times are different. As I rightly said, 20 years ago, there was no 9/11.
That's correct.
When Ross Perot came to contest. The nuclear tests we're having from North Korea were not there. The ISIS was not there. There's so much that has happened on the international scene that has impacted on the domestic policies of America and are leading to the kind of leadership that America would prefer. So the time that Ross Perot came, he was also a successful businessman from Texas, but the times are different. And this is why, and in any case, perhaps if he had the right message, maybe he would have been accepted at that time. But Donald Trump appeared to have had the right message. He was doing all the odd things, fighting at campaign rallies. You had violence, people were being beaten up. He was abusing a woman, abusing journalists. He was doing all the odd things, things that you can say that are completely unexpected of a politician aspiring to be the president of the United States. Yet, the voters kept following him at the primaries. And then in the general election too, the voters kept following him, leading to the leadership that is taken in the results. This suggests to me that he got the message to the right people and stayed by that message. And so the message didn't make meaning to us, the developing world, but it made a lot of meaning to the white majority voters.
Right. That's the point, Dr. Akwaya. Thank you very much. That's the point I would like Professor Okalo-Ochule to elaborate on. You already started on that trajectory. What are we saying here now? Assuming, in the final outcome, Donald Trump becomes president-elect of the United States and Hillary Clinton loses. Are we seeing the conflict, a direct conflict between global wishes and local desires? And if so, how might this be reconciled? Because ultimately the U.S. cannot forever isolate itself. Professor Ochule.
I think it's a crisis of empire. The empire is usually run by the ruling class, the powerful economic interests, powerful business groups, pirates, and so on. And they operate very well outside. In this particular situation, they have abandoned, as I said earlier, they abandoned their working class, abandoned those who had American dream that their children would also go to college, they too would have houses of their own. That was being shattered. And I don't think that Hillary Clinton's message that she will give everybody a living wage. A living wage would appeal to those who have jobs, but those who have lost jobs, that kind of statement didn't make sense. As I said, all the treaties that were made, Clinton's treaty of taking jobs to Mexico and to some extent to Canada, taking jobs to China, all those things did fit a certain category. For example, they did say that in North Carolina, the new young college graduates who are experts in computer sciences, who are experts at designing software in the computer age, they were not afraid of China. They were not afraid of America reaching out. But those whose jobs were linked to coal mining, those whose jobs were linked to factories that make cars and other things, were afraid. Those who were working in textile factories were alarmed that textiles were coming in and flooding the market. So you couldn't placate them by saying that you are going to give them better wages and so on. I think it is not altogether fair to say that black Americans did not support Clinton. The evidence that I saw just before I came, the British BBC report showed that it was very clear that, in fact, support for Clinton was probably higher than the support they gave for Obama the last time around, despite the identification of Obama as their first black president. And that it was very clear that over 80% of black voters voted for Clinton. Now, of course, the blacks were caught in a very tight situation. The Republicans started the campaign by having policemen shoot black people repeatedly so as to recall the days of lynching black people by hanging them from trees. This time you shot them in broad daylight, and nothing happened to the policemen that did it. And that fanned that Ku Klux Klan mentality of take them back to their place and so on. And of course, what's his name, Trump saying that throw Nigerians and throw Africans out of the United States, let them go back and build their own countries, and that Africa should be recolonized. All those things fit into the sentiment of those whites who were, for one, really alarmed at the notion of losing status because a black man was now in the White House. That was difficult for them to take. This prospect of, for a while there, they looked as if, Clinton was going to select an American Indian, an Hispanic as a vice presidential candidate. All those things sent signals which, to the white working class, who need somebody, even if you are sleeping on the street, when you look at a black executive walking by, at least you have that last satisfaction that I'm superior to you. I don't care what business position you have. I don't care how many degrees you have. You are black, I'm white. Those are the things, the sentiments that, what's his name, Trump was playing on. Trump was also playing on a certain imperial concept that in Latin America, they used to call Americans the ugly American. The chap who struts around, shoots people like a cowboy. As Trump said, we use this expression, beat the shit out of them. I mean, that's the American expression of ultimate impunity, expression of power and contempt for other people. And that's what Trump showed throughout. The way he treated Clinton was typical of working class American attitude towards women. Treat women as, your last frontier of defense of your manhood. You run them down. They shouldn't be, when you see a woman executive, and you are unemployed, I mean, it's somehow, it's as if you are boxed in. You don't even have a space anymore. You can't even have something to fight back with. These are some of the things that we have to look at. And Trump was not interested in policy as such. He was interested in sound bites. He ran that popular television program, You Are Fired. That is, you see.
All right, Professor Okello-Ochule, thank you very much. We'll take up some of the issues that you have also raised, but just to indicate that we have reactions already from our viewers to the subject matter that we are discussing, and then there's also reaction in the U.S. The campaign chair for Hillary Clinton, John Podesta, has already given a short speech. We'll give a track up of that speech now, and then we'll take the reactions from our viewers.
So we're not going to have anything more to say tonight. So listen to me. Everybody should head home. You should get some sleep. We'll have more to say tomorrow. I want you to know, I want every person in this hall to know, and I want every person across the country who supported Hillary to know that your voices and your enthusiasm means so much to her and to Tim and to all of us. We are so proud of you. And we are so proud of her. She's done an amazing job, and she is not done yet. So thank you for being with her. She has always been with you. I have to say this tonight. Good night. We will be back. We'll have more to say. Let's get those votes counted, and let's bring this home. Thank you so much for all of you have done. You are in all of our hearts. Thank you.
All right, that was an excerpt from the statement given by John Podesta, the chair of the Clinton campaign. Of course, we got that from a concession statement from what she also indicated there. It said, let's get votes counted. We just hope that this doesn't become, as it were, another Florida year 2000. So the votes are still coming in. We don't have the final result, and this is well past 8 Nigerian time. Eastern Coast is about 6 hours behind us. That's past 2 a.m. there, as well as you can subtract the number of hours we have in other time zones in the United States. Just to return to the subject that we are discussing, Ambassador Dahiru as well as Dr. Kwaya, it's significant, some of the points that Professor Okello-Ochule raised. you have a number of white working class persons, some of them not college graduates, in other words, they don't have university degrees, and as we will say in this part of the world, these are laborers, persons who feel ordinarily threatened. Then you have your younger population who are also coming in, and some persons are said to also be racist and their disposition towards women. Does this mean that, or does this suggest, assuming Trump wins eventually, that we, for a generation or more, we are unlikely to see a female president of the world's most powerful country? Tahir.
It is still possible, but the strategy of the campaign has to change. You see, just because you are a lady, if you don't go out to fight for your right, you don't go out to vote seriously for votes, you may not be able to succeed. It's just like what we have in Nigeria. If the women sit down and think that the men will just allow them to come in and take over from them, it will not happen. So the women must mobilize and take on the challenge of the men seriously. But let me add one thing as part of what was discussed before. I do not know what is going to play out in the United States with a Donald Trump presidency. I'm saying this because most of the Republican leaders abandoned him because they did not believe in his campaign. They did not believe in his methods. They did not believe in his behavior. They abandoned him. But he continued to campaign and still mobilizing people to attend his rallies. So the issue, he is saying the right thing to the white Americans. And already they are apprehensive of America being swarmed by people from other parts of the world. So he capitalized on their apprehension. And this is a clear indication of the result that we are seeing. But as we said earlier, the Americans have made their choice. Nobody can quarrel with it. Maybe what the outside world needs to do is to adjust itself to know how they are going to do business with Donald Trump. But
if he's declared winner.
If he's declared the winner. But I foresee a situation where most of the rhetorics bordering on demagogy that we heard from him will be consigned to the dustbin, because what he was preaching, that was not the America that we know. So there may be a radical change. As I said earlier, the institutions are stronger than individuals. I don't see Donald Trump going against the State Department. And I don't see him, if he declared the winner, going against the Department of Defense. So he has to subject himself to the ways things are done. But I'm of the opinion that there will be the issue of readjustment in the United States and readjustment with the rest of the world, maybe with the exception of Russia, because Russia has been supporting him all along.
First Ambassador Dairu, Dr. Akwaya, and Professor Chile, will take our next question to Mr. Ogo Nwakoro in U.S. before we look into Nigerians' reactions that we have received so far. Yes, Mr. Nwakoro, guests here in Nigeria, of course in Abuja studio, have looked at so many areas, and I'm sure you are making your own notes as well. The issue of the apprehension of white voters, even alongside other race back then in the United States. What new apprehension do you foresee? Earlier on when you started with your answers, you talked about the gloomy nature, the downside to what the African Americans and other blacks are actually looking at these days. Let's take a look at the new apprehension to see, should we have a Trump presidency, what do you think will be happening moving forward?
Well, first, I'm just now getting a good feed. Before it was in and out, so I couldn't even hear what you guys were saying, but I'm just getting it clearly now. One of the new apprehensions is this, with Donald Trump winning, we know, going back to the primaries, the folks that make Donald Trump to be the president, or to be likely to be the president-elect, that helped him to emerge from the primary, were hardline white supremacist folks with the extreme ideas, extreme anti-immigrant views and all that. So they are the ones, the not so educated, not college graduate folks, those folks that are not quite knowledgeable about what America is all about. They are the ones that we're worried about. Because of the extreme views that Donald Trump came about, we are concerned that those folks are going to start acting up on those ideas, like go back to where you came from. Like Donald Trump's slogan says, "Make America great again." America is already great. Donald Trump has made America great. So, like the discussion we're having earlier is not about the message, Trump's message. If it's about message, Hillary Clinton had a better message, had a stronger message, but nobody wanted to listen to that message because Donald Trump has created, or the Republican Party, together has created this hatred or this bad name for her that she never recovered from. Because of that, all they wanted, Donald Trump would say, "Make America great again." A black man is the current occupier of the White House. We want to take back our country. We want to take back America. We want to take back our White House. So these are coded messages. So, and that message stuck with those white anti-immigrants, white supremacists. So all they wanted to hear was, oh, Donald Trump got it. He said he's going to build the wall to fence all of them out, the Mexicans and all that. They bought into that, Now, Donald Trump, they continued, and Donald Trump eventually is likely, by the way, I hate to tell you guys, because I'm still watching the news here, is likely Donald Trump has won already, So it's likely. In fact, they've just declared Wisconsin for him, so which is another 10. So he's won. He's more like the president-elect of the United States. So like the professor said, the world needs to readjust on how to do business with the president, Donald Trump. Do I know how that is going to happen? I don't know. The professor talked about earlier about the steel industry, those that are not, that are unemployed. Donald Trump for some time has been buying his steel for his construction from China. So it's not about the message at all, but it's about the views, the extreme views. And it's the same views, by the way, that helped him to emerge from the primaries. Out of the 17 other candidates, he is the one that went to the extreme end with his views, the anti-immigration. America is for us. The Muslims should be fenced out of America. The Mexicans must go back. Now the Nigerians, the Africans must go back to there. So they are the ones, while the other candidates were busy trying to pander because they know there will be a general election. Donald Trump took his position and he continued with those hardliners. And they are the ones that helped him. And eventually, the white folks, backed him up. And then some other Hispanics people, especially like in the case of Florida, some Hispanics that actually think that they are whites, though they are Hispanic. So there are multiple things that are going in. One of them is we must punish Hillary Clinton. She is the one that worked with that black man that is occupying the White House. We are taking our America back. If we are going to be taking it back from the black man, we're not going to, we don't want the woman that worked with him as his Secretary of State to now go back to the same White House, because it's going to be a continuation of the same policies. So Donald Trump emerging as the president is really not about Donald Trump, what he's going to do, because like I said earlier, there are checks and balances that will make him abide by the Constitution, that, things that he can do against foreigners, against immigrants, against like Africa, for instance, are limited. But the hardliners that helped him to emerge, what are they going to be doing? Are they going to be more hate crimes against African Americans, against minorities? We don't know. You see, that is a concern. Earlier, somebody talked about police shooting, which now reduced. Police now, because Donald Trump didn't want the police, actually supported most of the actions that the police, was doing, that people shouldn't be talking bad about police. Will police shooting continue now that he has mine? Those are the questions, those are the apprehensions that we are concerned about now.
All right.
All right, Mr. Ugo Nwokoro, would like to thank you for your contributions. You spoke to us from Newark, where you are the deputy mayor of the city, just about 2:30 in the morning there. We hope you're able to catch some sleep. Once again, thank you for being with us. And when you do wake up, of course, the reality would have dawned. I hope so.
Yeah, the reality is here already. We know. I'm looking at it.
Well, all right. Thanks a lot for being with us, and we'll see you some other time. Okay, just to return to our studios, we indicated earlier that we have some twists. We'll take some of those twists and then continue with the other three guests with us in the Abuja studios.
All right, we have this one's from Chibuzo Jonathan. Says, my lesson in U.S. election is that there is no place like home. No matter how much they pretend, they want strangers, people, mostly people of colors. He also continues to have a great role to play when it comes to election by reaching out to the people and telling us clearly on their agendas.
And Sani Michael Omakoji has this tweet. It says, when we review America's political history, the unfolding results, that is of the presidential election, is not strange because Americans are prone to making mistakes after 8 years. And says the election result thus far also portends that Americans are still united despite immigrants' agitation against Donald Trump.
And from Adebayo Emmanuel says, Trump or Clinton, America remains America. No fear. It's all propaganda.
And then we have this from Gondo Andy. It says, good for them. It doesn't state who the them are because stats show that they didn't even come out to vote. Perhaps those who are regretful now that the results are not turning the way that they ought to be. Let's get the views of Dr. Cletus Acquire. We're talking about whether or not the door has been shut to a female presidential, a female president for the United States, anytime in the near future.
Well,
assuming, Hillary doesn't get any time.
The door is definitely not shut. And it appeared that Hillary was really qualified for this job, not just because she was a woman. But the ascendancy of Trump gives us the hope that you can also come even from the private sector, from the academics, from the careers, and actually aspire and probably win the presidency of the United States. So it's up for the women of America to go out there from whatever background they may be coming from the business, from those in political governance, from the professions, from the careers, to aspire. And I think that the society will recognize that. Other countries in Europe have achieved this, of having women preside over their affairs. And the whole world was looking forward to America, at least on this point, that America being regarded as the bastion of democracy, as the most advanced democracy in the world, as the largest democracy in the world, will have a woman as president. that hope appears to be fizzling out now. But I think all hope is not lost. There is a chance that a woman presidency might emerge in the nearest future in the United States.
Well, Dr. Kwai, I mean, how do you reconcile that with the fact that, look, perhaps, until Hillary Clinton, you had never seen a more qualified female presidential nominee of a political party. We've had a number of them, at least 2 or 3 of them in the last 30 years or more, serve as running mates, but not as a candidate, of the era of the political party. Measure that against what I'm sure some viewers and other followers of American politics also know. Was there a sense in which Hillary Clinton, assuming she loses the election now, would have been a victim of some consistent attack, not just over the emails that we just saw now? I mean, I've seen some books on the shelves, anywhere you go in the U.S., people taking advantage of the First Amendment, actually tearing, her reputation apart, whether when she was in Arkansas or when she was at the White House. Has she always been a target for vilification by elements who assume that someday she might aspire to become president?
I think Hillary was spotted long time ago. No one could say exactly where she was heading to, but it was clear to a lot of people that she was heading somewhere. It was not very clear whether she was going to run for the presidency, but it was clear also that she was a personality that could not be wished away. In everything she did, in the presidency of Bill, her husband, she became one of the most visible first ladies who even attempted to make to get involved in state policy, even as first lady. And she has a lot of firsts in her credit, becoming first this, first that, first lady to become a senator, becoming first female presidential candidate of a major political party, and so on and so forth. So I think she prepared herself. But as I said, it's not just all about preparation for the job. It's also about the circumstances. For instance, can we say that in the context of political governance, Trump prepared himself? The answer might be no. But in the context of leadership principles, he prepared himself as a private sector leader. So the point I'm making is that we can have another Hillary Clinton, not exactly with the same credentials of being a former first lady, a former senator, a former secretary of state, and so on and so forth, but we can have also another qualified U.S. Female to aspire, coming from any background, as I said earlier. And if the circumstance is right and the message is right, she might just be successful in the same way Trump has come and is successful. So the coast is still open, and there's a possibility that a woman can still make it. But I also want to add one point. If we look at the trend of the votes in the Senate, the Republicans are also having taken some leadership in terms of in terms of the numbers.
Yes.
So even though the institutions are there, with Trump controlling the Senate, that's his party, I mean the Republicans, control the Senate and the House of Representatives, there is a reasonable fear, an apprehension that cannot just be wished away. Will he be able to work with the Republican-dominated Senate and Congress to push through some of these policies that he has been canvassing? I think these are the kind of things that Nwokoro was reflecting on, and say that he was finding it very difficult to live with this reality. And so I think that the world may have to wait a while to see how the Donald Trump presidency may play out, working with the Republican-dominated Congress and Senate to see if these policies, he has used as a campaign message, the campaign message will be translated to policies as the president.
All right, Blessing, we have some tweets that have come in, and then we also have some information that Republican candidate in Nigeria here, we say candidate, but in the U.S. political system, it's called a nominee, that Donald Trump is already at his campaign headquarters and is expected to deliver an address shortly. Some of the numbers have also come in, it would appear that the magic number 270 has been crossed. We'll update you on the figures once we have the latest figures coming to us. All right.
Okay, let's quickly take other set of tweets that we have, and then we'll look at the way forward, especially for us as a nation and as a continent, in taking a look at how the elections turned out for the Americans. Chris Onwugamba says, Americans truly desire change. They needed it and voted for it. They've made a statement. Let's hope Trump is the change they wanted.
And then we have Cyril Erue tweets. Let the policy people and analysts worry about that. Trump is my man all the way.
And from Abdullahi Onisabi, America has decided who to lead them for the next 4 years, although it is against the wish of many people around the globe.
And then we have this from Sonny Michael Amakodis, one of our regulars in terms of reaction. It says, if Trump eventually wins, then I'd like to advise some men of God in Nigeria to limit their prediction to Africa alone.
Anyway, those are the tweets that have come in. Okay, Professor Ochuli, let's take a look at the areas of divisive interest, of course, even from the two major candidates, or the nominees, as we'll have them called. Some of the supports, whether popular or unpopular for them, support, and also the opposers, threw up so many things for everyone to see across the globe, or like Kingsley mentioned earlier, the global interest versus the local choice. For a divisive nation that we've seen from what the polls have turned out, what should the president-elect eventually start to do to heal some of moving forward? And what lessons for us as a nation?
You know, there's been a lot of pretense about the quality of the United States. One of my professors in 1972 at the International Political Science Conference, when I was a student, presented a paper in which he said the United States is an underdeveloped country. And it was very strange. All the Asians, Africans, and Latin American scholars supported him. All the Europeans, minus the Russians and the Canadians, were against him. And the point he was making was very simple. When he said, when you people describe conditions in Africa and characterize them as underdeveloped, the things you take into account are, do people use pit latrines? Are children dying of malnutrition? Is there a high rate of illiteracy in the population? Is there only one telephone for a whole village? He said those things apply in the states in the South. Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi. So those places are exactly what you describe as prevalent in Africa. But when you take the northeastern states, from Maine down to North Carolina, he said those are post-industrial societies. But to describe their situation in California, to describe their situation as typical of the whole of America is not correct. Likewise, the Americans have continued to say, and others have joined in, that they are a democracy. How can you be a democracy when half your population was kept, not half, well, a large section of the population was not allowed to vote because of the color of their skin. Policemen used dogs to chase blacks away from coming to register to vote. As late as George Bush II's election, votes by black sections of Florida were deliberately tampered with to make sure that they didn't go to support Al Gore. Now, and yet people continue to see the United States as a democracy and to celebrate it, when in fact it's not a full democracy. That is something which is going to be a major challenge for Trump, because his constituency, a lot of his support comes from the South, but also now it turns out that that industrial belt who have been decimated by exports of business factories outside the U.S. are now also with him. So he has to figure out how to work with that. On the international front, the people that rushed to invest wanted to invade Russia when Yeltsin came in and allowed them to go in and buy up Russian companies, they were all very excited. Russia is becoming a democracy. But the likes of Putin, who had spent their life as intelligence officers defending the Soviet Union against NATO, decided that this nonsense must stop. And they took over and they started rolling back all those takeover of Russian economy, and ended up with the NATO's reaction was not to say, okay, sorry, we made a mistake, let us dialogue and so on. Their policy was to say, okay, let's take away all the countries that were formerly in the Soviet Union, extend the borders of NATO towards what? Towards Russia, with Ukraine now being the boiling point at which the Russians are saying, nonsense, you can't stop, we can't continue with that nonsense, we'll not take it. Trump is likely to open this issue up since it is now clear the Russians played a major role in his election, either through leaking information about Clinton, or as some people suggest, maybe Putin had recruited Trump a long time ago as an agent.
All right. Well, Professor Ochuli, thank you very much. I mean, there are some areas we cannot immediately get into that, but there are matters arising from all of this. But there's one issue that I would like us to touch on very briefly, and my question goes to Ambassador Dahiru very, very briefly. Nwokoro, speaking to us from Newark, did indicate that, look, voters apparently were upset that you had a black man in the White House. Was this election a referendum on Obama presidency? That's one leg. And second leg, Nigerians often also ask themselves, fine, in 2008, we're all enthusiastic about Obama. 2012, we're all enthusiastic. What did Obama do for Africa, or particularly for Nigeria? Might Clinton have been different?
Number one, you know, President Obama and his wife campaigned vigorously for Hillary Clinton. And I think he did it because he was concerned with his legacy, which would be in jeopardy should Donald Trump win. But unfortunately, even though the results have not been officially declared, but we have a clear idea of where it is going. So his legacy may be in tatters, especially Obamacare, which Donald Trump railed against. And with both houses in the Congress controlled by the Republican Party, they may wind down the Obamacare, which afforded minorities and poor people who could not afford medical care at a reasonable cost. That may be in jeopardy. But also, coming to the second question, what did you say in the second?
Well, I mean, you talked about it, the first aspect of the question. Just before you continue, because I premised that and say whether the legacy of Obama as president will be impacted on Africa if Hillary Clinton had won. Legacy of non-action, as it were.
No, if she had won, the legacy of Obama would have remained, because she also campaigned on the fact that he did well for America. And in fairness to him, he did well for America. At the time he came, that was the time they had their recession. But he confronted it headlong. But then the other issue you are talking about,
what was it for Nigeria or Africa?
Whether Obama did something tangible for Africa. In my view, he did not. If you compare with what Bill Clinton did, if you compare with George Bush did.
All right. Ambassador Suleiman Dahiru, from Nigeria, Ambassador to the Sudan, Professor Okele Ochuli, and Dr. Cletus Akwaya, international relations expert. Gentlemen, you've been with us in the studios, and we've premised our conversation on the fact that we were not certain of the outcome of the U.S. election presidential election. Now we have the information that Mrs. Hillary Rodham Clinton has called Donald Trump to congratulate him on his victory. So, Donald Trump is President-elect of the United States of America. On the 20th of January 2017, he'll be sworn in. Gentlemen, we thank you for being part of our discussion this morning.
Thank you.
All right. Listen.
All right. We'll move over to sports now. And there we have our sports desk giving us information about two national teams, Super Eagles and that of Super Falcons, getting the morale booster ahead of their respective competitions as Vice President Yemi Osinbajo visit their camps in Abuja.
It was Tuesday evening at the National Stadium, Abuja. Super Eagles began training ahead of their Saturday's clash with Algeria in the 2018 World Cup qualifiers,